The U.S. Mexico border has long been a flashpoint of political debate, humanitarian crises, and logistical challenges. Spanning nearly 2,000 miles, it represents one of the most complex intersections of two nations anywhere in the world. By 2024, the border's significance has only grown, driven by escalating migration patterns, transnational crime, trade dependencies, and the enduring political legacy of policies enacted during Donald Trump's presidency. While many of Trump's policies have been modified or overturned since his administration ended, their influence continues to shape the landscape of border security and bilateral relations. Understanding the current state of the border requires dissecting these policies' effects and their ripple across time, from the construction of the border wall to strict immigration enforcement measures. The Trump administration's approach to the U.S. Mexico border was marked by a staunch emphasis on physical barriers, stricter asylum processes, and an overarching narrative of deterrence. The centerpiece of this strategy, often encapsulated in the phrase, "build the wall," was the push to construct a physical barrier stretching across vast portions of the southern border. By 2021, approximately 450 miles of new or replacement wall sections have been built, often in areas deemed strategically important by U.S. Customs and Border Protection (CBP). These barriers were supplemented by advanced surveillance technologies, including drones, infrared cameras, and motion sensors, creating a multi-layered approach to border security. In 2024, much of this infrastructure remains in place, but its utility and symbolic meaning remain hotly contested. Critics argue that the wall has done little to address root causes of migration, while proponents maintain it has acted as a critical deterrent against illegal crossings. The physical wall, however, was just one element of Trump's broader strategy. Policies like the Remain in Mexico program, formerly known as the Migrant Protection Protocols (MPP), fundamentally altered the asylum process for tens of thousands of migrants. Under MPP, asylum seekers were required to wait in Mexico while their cases were processed in the U.S. immigration courts, often enduring unsafe and unsanitary conditions in border cities overwhelmed by the influx. Although this policy was suspended in 2021 under President Joe Biden, it left an indelible mark on the asylum system. By 2024, echoes of this approach are visible in new frameworks for regional asylum processing, as both nations grapple with how to handle unprecedented numbers of migrants fleeing violence, economic instability, and climate change across the Americas. Migration has reached record levels, with border encounters surpassing 2 million annually for the first time in 2022 and showing little sign of abating. This influx reflects not only global trends but also the cascading effects of Trump-era policies that dismantled previous pathways for legal migration while creating bottlenecks in the asylum process. These dynamics have forced Mexico and the U.S. to engage in closer cooperation, even as tensions flare over differing priorities. For instance, while Mexico has increased its enforcement efforts at its southern border with Guatemala, often at the behest of U.S. officials, Mexican leaders have simultaneously criticized American policies for failing to address the demand for immigrant labor in sectors like agriculture and construction. The economic relationship between the two nations adds further complexity to the border debate. The U.S.-Mexico border facilitates one of the most significant trade flows in the world, with daily crossings valued at over $1.7 billion. The border's logistical infrastructure, ports of entry, bridges, and highways, must handle immense volumes of goods while contending with security demands and the flow of migrants. The Trump administration's trade policies, particularly the renegotiation of NAFTA into the USMCA, included provisions that directly impacted cross-border logistics. By 2024, these provisions have taken full effect, reshaping supply chains and labor agreements. Yet, the border remains a choke point for trade, with congestion and inefficiencies continuing to plague the system. At the heart of the ongoing debate is the human toll. Migrants continue to undertake perilous journeys, often risking their lives to cross desert landscapes or rely on human smugglers, known as coyotes, to navigate increasingly militarized terrain. Trump's policies sought to deter this movement through family separations and zero-tolerance prosecutions, sparking international outrage. While these practices were largely abandoned, their psychological and political impacts endure. In 2024, the U.S. government faces mounting pressure to address the humanitarian aspects of border security, balancing enforcement with compassion. Shelters, legal aid programs, and reintegration efforts in both the U.S. and Mexico are under strain, revealing systemic gaps in the broader immigration system. On the diplomatic front, U.S. Mexico relations remain deeply intertwined with border issues. Trump's emphasis on pressuring Mexico to act as a buffer zone led to measures like the deployment of the Mexican National Guard to curb northbound migration. While such measures initially created friction, they also set a precedent for closer collaboration. In 2024, joint initiatives tackling drug trafficking and cartel violence have expanded, reflecting a growing recognition that border security is a shared responsibility. However, these efforts are undermined by mutual mistrust and differing political pressures. In the U.S., border policies are a key electoral issue, often weaponized by both major parties to rally their bases. In Mexico, the perception of subservience to humans fuels nationalist rhetoric. Perhaps the most enduring aspect of Trump's border policies is their role in reshaping public perceptions of immigration and security. His administration's rhetoric framed the border as a site of crisis and confrontation, a narrative that persists in 2024. While subsequent administrations have sought to temper this framing, the political landscape has been indelibly shaped. Debates over the border are no longer confined to physical barriers or immigration numbers. They encompass broader discussions of national identity, economic priorities, and global responsibility. As climate change accelerates migration from Central and South America, the border is increasingly viewed as a front line in a global crisis, testing the resilience of policies inherited from the Trump era. The future of the U.S.-Mexico border hinges on reconciling these competing demands. Security concerns must be balanced against the need for human treatment of migrants and efficient trade systems. Trump's legacy looms large, not only in the policies that remain but also in the unresolved tensions they have exposed. In 2024, the U.S. and Mexico face a choosing to approach the border as a source of division or as a bridge for cooperation. This decision will define not only the fate of millions who live along the border but also the broader trajectory of North American relations in the 21st century.